started off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and now...
That's right. We are live.
The ghost faced himself, Brandon Panev.
This isn't like the start of last season when it looked like the Canucks were just a beer league team not playing defense at all. And just before Chris goes, I'm Chris, you can actually go now.
No, hold on.
We had to give more time for coming on late. So.
I still had, hold on. All right. Chris go, and then I got something else to say at the end.
So, an elf and a midget in 2 back-to-back games. He's definitely on a friendship tour for sure.
Saying, I'm okay with him being, the 6'7" defenseman. No! He is a AHL defenseman right now.
Look, Shonky, don't mind Devin, okay? We all struggle with Devin, so you know.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com, Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitch.com, Shifts and Pucks, Twitter, as well as subscribe wherever you get your audio, and at the Area 51 Sports Network. Happy belated Easter to all of you. It's weird because normally now Easter would be the time that we're at least halfway through the first round of the playoffs. We are just ending the regular season. We're still not quite on normal time, but we are here pre-game. The Vancouver Canucks in a must win this in regulation to have any extra hope of prayer to get into the playoffs. Simple as that. It has to be a regulation win. I flat out against the Dallas Stars. Here, the game starts at 7:30. We're doing our pregame pod. Yes, the Flames are playing the Blackhawks. We'll deal with them on Wednesday, but it's the Canucks, and we've got we are all over the place. Tyler's in a hotel in Richmond, British Columbia. I almost said Richmond, Virginia.
Yes, almost in Vancouver. You can see Vancouver just over there. You can see a golf town as well, which is really exciting. Here for the Canucks game tomorrow night against the Senators, but we'll be watching the one tonight on TV with you guys, I'm sure, and looking forward to hopefully still having 2 very significant games here for the Canucks.
I hated to put like all this pressure on this game for you because you're like going to tomorrow's game, but really,
yeah, no, it's a huge game.
Chris, hello.
Hello, Kevin.
You will have playoff hockey this weekend in your town, at least. Well, not in your town. The Kelowna Rockets start in Seattle, and probably will be one of the best series in the WHL. At least you'll have that, should you not. But
true. I should actually look into see if playoff tickets are priced out here.
I should find out for you. Sean, hello.
Hello, Kevin. With all your musts about that regulation, when I got to, for the people watching, I'm sure you saw a bit of a quizzical look on my face, and I don't think it's actually must win in regulation. But
I looked at the schedules of all of the teams, like the Vegas and Kings, and to me, I think you either have to run the table or you can only lose once.
Well, I think they have to win as many games as possible, but I don't think if they win this game in overtime, it's not the final nail in the coffin here, because in reality they're chasing 3. They've got 3 teams that are still still within reach here. They've got 2 games in hand on LA, who are only at 90 points, and that's probably the most attainable spot if they can get past Vegas.
The problem is the Kings' schedule is twice Anaheim, Seattle, and Vancouver.
Again, they're playing Vancouver, so there's one there, and Anaheim's not a team to scoff at.
No,
Seattle maybe, but Anaheim's not. Especially with them being a crosstown rival.
Okay. By the way, Cap Space Andy from Cap Space Wins Cups will be joining us here in a few minutes, so we'll be having his run in here as well. And maybe Tyler, Chris, maybe we'll get your perspective. But the way I looked at it is I just based it on the schedule.
Yeah.
I think the Canucks, between the 3 strength of schedule, I have the Canucks at the toughest of the 3 schedules. because you got tonight, you got Ottawa, then you have Minnesota, which is the one problem game for me in this, and then Calgary, which is that's a gimme. That's a flip 'em, really. Either way, I can go either way depending on where Calgary's at. But that's the toughest game for me in the schedule that I see is that game in Minnesota. And maybe you guys see it differently, but
I think with the Canucks, as far as must wins and all that. I mean, now any points gained by those other teams is dramatically problematic. So yes, a regulation win would be preferred tonight. But for all the other teams, there's no automatics out there really, other than Arizona. So strength of schedule is, I would agree. Probably the Canucks have the toughest road here towards the finish line, but the other teams it might look easy on paper, but there's nothing that's certain there either.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that take, to be honest with you.
okay. So if they lose tonight, you're still. I mean, there's not a huge chance here anyway, but we're not like.
Well, Sean and I have been pretty consistent in our we don't care like what the chances are. We are there to watch the games, and regardless, we're still hoping for a win because we want to watch entertaining hockey.
Until they put that line through and gray the name on the graphic, there's still that to be watching, as foolish as that may sound.
As we add, look at this. From Cap Space Wins Cup. Joining us live. Hello, Andy.
Hello. How is everybody?
Good.
Everybody's good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Andy, I just have one question. Don't you know that it's not the cap space that wins cups? It's the long-term IR that wins cups.
That's right. Yeah. We're gonna rename LTIR circumvention gets you a ring.
Yeah, it's something that Sean just really loves a lot. It's that LTIR cap circumvention thing. It's his favorite thing ever.
Let's start there then. Why didn't Calgary use some more IR and load up a bit more?
Oh, that'd probably be the owners.
load up on what though?
Well, I don't know. I'm just wondering if they even had injuries they could have. I mean, Tampa Bay, Vegas, all these other teams seem to find some guy who's got like a sore baby pinky toe and is out for 2 months. So
You're not cynical at all about this.
No. I actually think that there's nothing wrong with the system. Like if you want to, like Vegas, perfect example. If you want to go without Mark Stone for 3 months, go ahead. I mean, they're probably 50-50 at best now to make the playoffs. They had to bring him back early. So, I mean, it's the risky play, right? If you want to do that and it works out, great. Or you could just as easily end up as Vegas and, look
Have
like
a blow up in your face.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't actually have a problem with it.
My biggest issue, actually, there's two issues that I have with it. It's when you're trading players who are injured that you're going to be using to either if you're Arizona, pad the cap so that you're not actually spending to the cap floor, or you're doing what Tampa did in last season and trading for players to load up so you could get as much LTIR space before the season even starts to get that. Those are my two ones. The one that Vegas did, once I actually understood it, I didn't understand it because it is a convoluted rule and process and everything to create all that. Once I did understand it, it's not nearly as bad as what Tampa did last season in terms for me. But I think one thing I want to see them they need to get rid of is that just being able to trade injured players just to pad the cap so that teams like Arizona aren't actually icing competitive teams.
I the one part I would say is I know there was a lot of people talking about the Alec Martinez injury as an example that it was really serious, and I'm always a little. I want to be careful of assuming that everything has been I do think that there's nonsense. I do think that. But I also think that there is some legitimate injuries. But I'm more to me, trading the Anaheim Ducks, trading the Vegas acquiring legend Ryan Kessler for cap space. To me, that to me is that I don't like, because Kessler hasn't played since when? When has Kessler played last? Like 2018?
Yeah, at least 3 years ago.
Yeah, like that. Just to me, that's that part. I agree. I think that needs to get out of the game.
Or like what happened with Pronger's contract right before he officially retired.
Yeah,
How about that, Suk? Let's name all the Arizona Coyote greats.
Yeah, they have enough of those greats that they could fill that 5,000 seat arena like quite quickly. And next year they're probably going to be doing the same damn thing, like because they're stripping it down for they're going hard for Connor Bedard. Like that is.
Well, that's the whole point of the cap floor, is to try and avoid that. And if you're allowing teams to stash players on injured reserve versus long-term injured reserve, or even going into the whole cap recapture and how players can not retire and stay on LTIR versus retire, depending on what works best for a certain team, I think is something that needs to be looked at.
I'm kind of of two minds. Like if you look at the system, there's, a max of, 90 million times 32 teams in the system, right? That's the max sort of amount of money that can be spent a year, right? So, to me, if let's say, Tampa, if they want to send, whoever player who's injured to Arizona, because Arizona can pay them $800,000 in cash and get a $10 million cap hit, well then, in theory, Tampa would have 10 more million of cap space to go buy another player, right? I don't mind that, but the problem that I have is I agree is when you see a Kessler or a Chris Pronger, like Chris Pronger was working for the NHL when he got traded. Like to me, that if it's so obvious you're not going to ever play again, I don't think you can be traded. You know what I mean? Like Ryan Kessler said hundreds of times he's never playing again. He can barely skate. So why is another team acquiring that player, right? Obviously, it's not because they think he can help them win games.
Yeah. That's the thing. So we were discussing how important this game is how must win is this for you tonight? Is this Canucks Stars game? Is this a must win, or are you on the belief of the playoff train? Or
yeah, I mean, like I've been kind of saying for a month now that playoffs are probably over. I mean, playing Dallas, if this is the team, them or LA, you're going to have to catch if you want to get in, right? So I don't think it's a must win. I think it's a must win in regulation. Like it's great if you get 2 points, but if their team gets one, you only gained 1 point, right? Like it's the problem with this system, and it's why the Canucks win versus Vegas last week in overtime stung so bad, is because you were 54 seconds away or whatever from getting 2 points on Vegas and making a legitimate race. And instead, you only get one, and kind of get ground, but not really. So, I guess to answer your question, they have to win in regulation.
Yeah. Devin, who Pal must win, of course. Hello, Devin.
Very helpful, thank you.
Yeah. The big news, of course, the big thing is, do we want to start with the good news or the bad news? Maybe let's start with the bad news. I think there's some meat on this bone. Bo Horvat is out. I mean, it was pretty obvious when we saw the injury. I don't think we need to know that. Where I think anyone that knows the body even a little bit knows that the ankle is part of the lower body. But how significant of a loss is this? We'll start with Andy. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's huge, right? He's been, I think he's got 32 goals now. He's been getting big goals too. We have a conversation on our podcast all the time about a player like Connor Garland, and it's like, okay, he has 14 goals. And my argument is that's great. But if you go, 20 games between goals in the most important part of your season, are you really helping your team, right? Like before Garland scored the other day against San Jose, I think he got the 7th goal in a 7-1 win versus Arizona or something. Right? That to me is not an important goal. Whereas Horvat has been scoring big goals, go-ahead winners, game winners, tie games. He scored a minute and a half in versus Vegas the other night. Like, he's been playing really well. He takes all the face-offs on the team. I think it's a massive loss. I mean, outside of losing probably Demko, it's probably the second biggest loss they could have had right now, to be honest.
Yeah, because of all those scenarios, in particular defensive zone face-offs and his role on the power play. Yeah, it's a huge hole. I mean, the guys are up against it. They know how badly they need to win these games, and I guess now it's a bit of a blessing in disguise to see what the Canucks can do when facing this sort of adversity, missing their captain and a guy that plays in so many situations.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like he's going to be out for quite a while at this point, just because a media friend of mine said that he saw him in a boot and one of those scooters. So I don't think he's going to be playing anytime soon. But yeah, the impact of that loss is definitely huge.
It is. He's between him and Miller. They're the engines that run this team, and they're the emotional heartbeat too. And Bo may not show it as outwardly as Miller does, but you can tell how charged up he is and how charged up the team is when he scores a goal early or scores an important goal. You can see that emotion in there, and yeah, it's tough. And as soon as that puck hit his ankle, I was just like, oh no! I was really hoping for maybe just a stinger, but it's definitely more than that. And it's too bad because he was having such a great streak there of playing it at the top of his game and producing at a rate that was comparable to the best in the league.
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet where it said that only Matthews had been outscoring him in the past month or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are we I want to maybe toss this out there. I know that there's been other names. I mean, we've tossed Lindholm for Selke out there when we talk about the Flames. Should Bo Horvat be in this conversation for Selke?
I don't think not this season, but he's definitely made strides. There was a lot of talk about Bo being that type of player coming in, and he definitely struggled at the outset of being that 200-foot player. He started off in the bottom six when he came into the league, and he was playing pretty well. And then once he got more offensive responsibilities, the defensive game kind of fell off for him for a little bit, but he's starting to get it back now. And I think if he continues to progress the way he has this season, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility in the next couple seasons.
Yeah, to me, a Selke player, I think, has to kill penalties consistently. I mean, Horvat has sort of killed penalties, but I don't know how good defensively you are when you have literally an historically bad penalty kill for half the year. I mean, I guess you could make the argument because he does win so many defensive zone faceoffs, and it's a huge part about playing well in your own end is getting the puck out quickly, that maybe he's in the conversation. But to me, I can probably name 15 to 20 players I'd put ahead of him. So not really a candidate in my opinion.
Like I would say that he's not definitely not in like the top 10 in that conversation in the league, but he's like Sean said, he's definitely made progress in that realm. I just don't see him in that tier yet.
Yeah, I'll add that same sentiment as well. You get pretty good in this regard, but there's still a lot of other great candidates out there, and not maybe in that top tier yet.
Fair enough. I don't know. I'm not one that thinks. I mean, I think you need to be in all situations. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
But I do think I would put the fact that he's so good at face-offs is the reason I asked that question, because it's not, is it his fault that the coaches is putting him out in penalty kill situations? Like, it's not like he'd be a terrible penalty killer. It would seem to me like, there hasn't been a lot of criticism, nor should there be much criticism of Bruce Boudreau, but perhaps that would be one question I would be asking is why isn't Bo Horvat at least in some ways, part of that penalty kill?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of disagree. Like, I think this Horvat's 8th or 9th season in the league. Time goes so quick. He's never really been a good penalty killer. Like, he has his moments, I guess, but a lot of times I find he gets lost kind of in space. He sort of loses himself on the ice and gives up passes or shots that he probably shouldn't. Kevin, I see where you're coming from with the faceoffs. Like I said, being able to get the puck out of your zone quickly is, the best penalty kill, the best sort of defensive strategy, right? Is don't play in your own end. But to me, he just doesn't do enough of the other things. Like if he ever loses a faceoff or, the defenseman can't get the puck out, I almost think of him more as a liability than an asset in his own end, to be honest.
See, I if you were talking about last season and before, I'd agree, but I think he's made immense steps in that this year, especially under Boudreau. I think that penalty kill system that the Green and Baumgartner deployed was not good, and they're still trying to fight through some of the bad habits, and they're starting to get out the other end here. And Bo Horvat's kind of led the way there. Yeah, there's still some times where he gets turned around, but who doesn't in this league at this point? Like that's just the thing. The skill level in the NHL now offensively is just at a level where it doesn't matter how good you are defensively, you're going to get turned around, even if you're one of the best defensive players in the game at times. So I think from what I've seen from Bo this year, I think he has made strides. Like I said, I don't see it being this year, but I honestly have seen significant strides defensively from him in this season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be like there's so many. I mean, we've talked about next year it seems like we've talked about next year for a year almost. It's like literally since last December. But it will be interesting once everything gets settled in place and who's in and who's out. What if Bo Horvat is here? And I have no reason to assume that he's not. But let's how he's deployed, because I do see an evolution in his game, and I think I see where both of you are coming from. I think that there were struggles, and I think there's strides too. But we'll have to see too, because the one thing that hasn't happened yet is a full camp with Bruce Boudreau, and that's still a question even in that of itself. But who is coming back is Mr. Brock Besser. He's skating on a line with Podkolzin, who has been. I think he's been fantastic the last little bit. This guy has taken some good strides. Like it's almost, I almost want to compare it sort of to Andrew Mangiapane, but it's not quite the same. It's like there's a huge step here with Podkolzin. Like I think he's taken his game to another level.
Just looks really comfortable out there. He doesn't seem to be hitting a wall at this point. I can't remember which game it was where he did the little behind the back pass to set up. I don't know if it was Horvat that scored, if I'm remembering this right. But you'd think at this stage of the season, if anything, he might start struggling a bit as the intensity picks up. But no, he seems to be just thriving right now. So that's really a welcome sight, obviously.
Yeah. But Besser back with Miller and Podkolzin, and of course you got Pettersson with Garland and Chason, Alex Chason, and then you got Lamico, Matthew Highmore returning, and I'm a Matthew Highmore guy. I like he's not the superstar, but I think Matthew Highmore does some good things out there. But it's nice tonight. I think the good thing tonight too is 12 forwards, 6 defensemen.
That's always good.
Well, it's supposed to be 11 and 7. I don't know. I like the 12 and 6, and but
11 and 7 is tough for defensemen because you can never get into a proper rhythm. And then same with the forwards. Whoever's on that that partial line never really feels like they're part of the rotation either.
Yeah. But
And can I just go back to Podkolzin for a second here? His willingness to drive the net is just so much fun to watch. It's everything that we've wanted from all the different quote unquote power forward prospects that the Canucks have had over the past years, whether it was Vertanen or
Yeah.
Archibald or McEwen or Gadjevich, or like just continue to name them off. That what he does, how he drives the net is just, it's great, because that's going to create havoc. It's going to create goals. It's going to help generate more chances than just stopping off and trying to set things up a lot of the time, because I think that's something that this team does too much. They look too much for the perfect play instead of just forcing the issue. And when Bo Horvat's at the top of his game, he does the same thing. He forces the issue and goes down and creates offense. JT Miller the same. When they're at the top of their game, they do that. And Podkolzin has that ability.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I like about Podkolzin too, like you mentioned, is he drives to the net, but the other part about going to the net is he's not afraid to, you know, get in the top of the crease and get those loose pucks, or even in the slot there and get that quick one-timer pass, right? Like, I think we've seen he has a great shot, and, you know, outside of maybe Pettersson or Miller, there's nobody else really on the Canucks that's willing to go to the net, find that soft spot, stand there, get a shot off, and, you know, take a hit or cross check or something, you know, but with the idea of trying to score a goal. And to me, that's so nice to, number one, to watch, and number two, to see. Like, you know, it's the biggest reason I always push back on Canucks re-signing somebody like Alex Chason, is because Podkolzin does everything Chason does, but better, smarter, and quicker. You know, the last 10, 15 games, he's been an absolute treat to watch. Like you said, he goes to the net hard. The other thing I like about Podkolzin too is that he's not afraid to mix it up a little bit after the whistle. If he gets pushed, or if a teammate, you know, is getting a rough ride, like, he'll go over and not necessarily fight the guy, but bump him, shove him, face wash him. Like, he's
Scrum it up.
Yeah, exactly. He's a player who's not going to take any BS, and, you know, come the playoffs, and, you know, let's be honest, these are basically like playoff games now. This is exactly what you'd like to see. I wish the Canucks had 12 of them, 12 of Podkolzin, to be honest.
So you're not buying the theory of the Pettersson Chason being the new McDavid Draisaitl combo of the NHL. You're not there on that yet? No.
I don't know. They're getting close.
Yeah. He's versatile too, like Podkolzin. He's versatile, and I remember watching him in the World Juniors a couple of years ago. Bubble year, I believe. Yes, it was the bubble year. When he was with Russia, he was creating havoc there, and I think didn't he have a letter with that Russian team?
I think he was the captain, wasn't he?
He was the captain, yes.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot. Yeah, that is. You know, remember a couple of years ago, everybody was like, there was like when Cole Caulfield all got hot, and there were some people like Caulfield over Podkolzin. I wonder if we look back and think that Podkolzin turns out to be a bit of a steal of that draft. Not that Caulfield is a terrible, like that Caulfield was terrible, but there's, like, you look back, that's a.
And the fact that he was able to drop to 10 as well. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that for most of that year, he was kind of considered a top 3, top 5. And, you know, I think the Russian factor really hurt him, the KHL. You know, ultimately he only signed like a 2-year extension after he got drafted. But I think there was plenty of teams that were scared he was going to do the Kaprizov thing and sign, you know, 6, 7, 8 years in Russia. And that's kind of why he fell. Because when you look at that list, if you were to do a redraft, I mean, Trevor Zegras is probably ahead of him. You know, I'm not sure if there's anybody else long-term that I'd want except for Zegras over Podkolzin in that draft.
Sider.
Yeah, I mean, he's good too, right? A defenseman.
Yeah,
you can never
I
go
would say
wrong.
Jack Hughes, Byram, Doc is all really good. There's a lot of good, and Matthew Boldy, Minnesota got at 12 is ripping it
That's
up
another
too.
steal right there too.
But the thing about Podkolzin is I could see he might be a bit more of a late bloomer in this draft than compared to, say, the Jack Hughes, the Moritz Siders, the Zegrases, I think. But I wouldn't be surprised if come 5-10 years from now, 10 years from now, we're looking at the redraft of this and we are talking about him being maybe a top 5 prospect in that draft. Turcotte hasn't stepped through yet. Broberg hasn't stepped through yet. but and as good as Caulfield can be offensively, he's shown how inconsistent he can be. And going from super hot in the playoffs last year to absolutely nothing, and then back to being super hot again. So while Podkolzin does all the little things correct too. Like when he's all said and done and at his prime, he's gonna be like a pro's pro. I think someone who gets it, who does the little things to help the team win, and also has the skill to be able to produce offensively.
What are we expecting from Brock Besser tonight?
I don't know.
He needs to step up.
Do we ever know what his injury was? Was it a wrist again, or?
Oh, I don't think we really knew, but it was. He got that hit from Petey. So yeah, it was an arm, wrist, elbow thing.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So, he just needs to find a way to get on the score sheet and produce tonight, because without Bo, there's a hole in that offense. You're missing Pearson, you're missing Horvat now up front. You need to find someone who can step up, and the next man up mentality needs to be huge tonight.
Yeah, especially with how important of a win this game is. Yeah, Besser has to produce.
And I think he'll be very motivated to do that. Let's not forget he's headed for restricted free agency at the end of the season, so he doesn't have a lot of opportunity left to make an impact. And the games are as huge as they ever were. So I think we'll have a pretty good one from him tonight.
And then the other big, or Andy, did you have anything to say, or?
No, you guys nailed it.
The other thing that Jeff Merrick said this morning on Halford and Bruff that caused a bit of a conversation was, it sounds like the only person that is not available for trade right now is for everybody, or how much of this is just we're creating conversation just to have a conversation, and how much of this is believable?
I think it's
believable that, all options would be considered, but I mean, there's not a lot of scuttlebutt that's legitimate out there these days compared to how it was with the old management.
Yeah,
go ahead, Eddie.
I think it's a tough question to answer, because to me personally, I don't think any player is ever untouchable. I mean, if the New York Rangers come to you and say, we'll give you Adam Fox 10 first-round picks and we'll eat half his salary, you want Quinn Hughes in return? I mean, obviously you're going to make that trade, right? So do I think the Canucks are actively looking to trade Quinn Hughes? No. But I think if somebody calls and says, hey, we're interested in Quinn Hughes, they're going to say, okay, here's our price. Let us know what you want to do, right? So it's kind of a tricky situation, because they're not actively shopping him, but they're not hanging up the phone either, if that makes sense. Which, in my personal opinion, I would make Quinn Hughes the only untouchable. I wouldn't be looking to trade Thatcher Demko, but I think you could get a lot of value back based on his performance and his cap hit that I'd be willing to listen.
When was the last time we saw a goalie get traded where the trade made sense, though? That's the issue. And I think. Well, I think, but how long ago was that? Like, it's been so long. And even then, I think people were upset that it was only just the 10th overall pick, right? And there's two things that are going on here. There's still, I think Alvin specifically, everything I've heard, and Merrick's talked about this before, is that he's someone who is a no stone unturned type of person. He wants as much information as possible before making a decision. I think a lot of that is that. And I think part of it is Demko might be the untouchable, or the one that they're not even listening to, because they know that the offers aren't there because of the market of goaltenders. And how I personally think that the way we evaluate goaltenders and how we scout goaltenders as you from fans all the way up into the top end is completely underappreciated and is a spot that you can exploit if you're a good team. But most teams don't have that yet, aren't at that level, so that their value isn't anywhere close to the value of a good goaltender to that team. I don't think you're getting the value back for what Demko brings to this team in any realistic trade here. While I do think that there could be some potential for that for everyone else, and while there are the arguments that Hughes could be traded or Pettersson could be traded, maybe a little thin, I still think you have to listen and find out what the options are, and then this management team knows what they can go after in the offseason.
Yeah, I would have to agree for the most part. Like with goalies being as voodoo as they are, like what you have in Thatcher Demko, how promising his future is going to be. So I think that the risk that you would take moving him to get a big piece back is just not worth it, because you're not sure if you're ever going to be able to replace that properly. Because especially like with goalie for goalie trades, it never works out the way you wanted it to. So I really think that, Marek's not wrong. As far as like the trade proposal that Andy brought up as a hypothetical before for Quinn Hughes, like there's other ways you can replace a Quinn Hughes or a PD, but as far as replacing Demko, it's so much more difficult that, he's probably my only untouchable.
See, I kind of feel the opposite way. Like, to me, when I look long-term, Quinn Hughes, the ticket he's at and the skill set he brings, I'm not sure if there's many players I'd rather have. Like maybe Fox, Makar, maybe Miro Heiskanen you could talk me into. But that's kind of the bar where I have Quinn Hughes set. And the reason I would listen on Demko is that, Demko, I think, is arguably top 5 goalie in the league. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But having a good goalie and a bad team around him doesn't necessarily help. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can do more to build with Quinn Hughes than you can with Thatcher Demko because he is such a unique position.
The thing about Demko now is that, we got a little taste of it there in the bubble playoffs, whereas if there is a decent team in front of him, he himself can propel it a lot further along, right?
Yeah.
It'd be an awful shame to miss that opportunity with him. Should the stars start lining up here and they're able to have a team that's capable of going a couple rounds at least.
Well, and that circles back to the original question that Kevin had, right? Is that who is untouchable and who should be untouchable? Is that, if you think you can turn the team around in the next 2-3 years, then absolutely you have to keep Thatcher Demko, like you said, because if you get even sort of a somewhat competent team ahead of him, he can steal a series on his own. Mm-hmm. But if you think you are 2-3 years away from building that team, are you better to just bottom out, kind of do the Buffalo Sabres thing and put, the 47-year-old neighbor next door in net, let in 15 goals a game and get a higher pick and build that way, right? It's a tough call because, like you said, Demko, like you said, you can see what he can do to a team and how he can help, and at the same time, he might be on that line where he's just good enough that you can't properly build your team because he simply won't let you be bad enough.
See, the way I look at it here, I look at it like if you look at this division, just look at the Pacific Division overall, the Vancouver Canucks are in the best position goaltending wise in this going forward, even with the Flames with Jacob Markstrom, and it's because of age and contract. They have the best goalie with the best contract right now. Like the Knights don't have a great goaltending situation. The Oilers we've talked ad nauseum about. Anaheim's not in a great situation. Gibson's good, but I don't know if he's top 5. To me, I think you have an opportunity here with Thatcher Demko to go further in the playoffs and build a team around him. Like if you agree that he's a top 5 goalie in this league, I think that this is the guy that I would be building around.
And I think
go ahead, Sean.
and
or whoever.
Personally, I don't think that tanking works. I think drafting well works, but tanking doesn't. And to take away a Demko to a point and create a void in net is not going to help them rebuild at all, in my opinion. I think you're better off keeping him. And just because that, and I think there's like tiers, right? I think the way Alvin, the management group, and Rutherford look is they've got Demko at the top, and he's the one that you're gonna have to offer up your firstborn child, a king's ransom, the moon, and maybe a black hole, because you know what, like to get him type deal. And then you've got the next step down where you've got Pedersen and Hughes, who I think I think there's a better argument to be made to even listen to that, and then and go from there. But I do think that the price to get either of those is astronomical as well. And then after that, I think it's completely fair game. I think there's very good arguments for everyone else to help free up the cap space that they want to help build a better and deeper team.
No, I'm glad you said that, right? Because I think that's the important thing to keep in mind at this conversation, is that we're not looking to run any of these guys out of town.
No.
You have an extremely high bar, and you're willing to listen and see if somebody gets a little nuts and is willing to pay for it, right? I mean, I don't think maybe McDavid is the only player in the league that I would absolutely say no to any trade offer that ever came across my desk.
Yeah.
There you go, right? See, exactly. Anybody can be traded for anything, right? It just depends on what that level is. And when you're in a position like the Canucks where the team isn't good enough, I don't think you can ever say, no, we're not trading this guy under any circumstance. I think you're a fool if you do that.
I mean, every once in a while around trade deadline time, you'll hear a player or somebody reference how Wayne Gretzky got traded, and therefore anybody can get traded. So
that's right.
You stole the words right out of my mouth, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just look at it, and there is some redundancies that they need to get out of this lineup here. Andy, you talked a little bit earlier about not necessarily wanting to bring back Alice Chase on, but they've got 3 wingers that are all basically the same, and that's Pearson, Dickinson, and Chason. In my opinion, Dickinson's not had a good season, but Pearson and Chason have had good parts of the season, and they know their role. And I think maybe you can bring back Alice Chason to basically replace a Pearson if you move him, because Pearson at 3.25 versus say Alex Chason at probably sub two, that opens up some cap space. And we've already talked about how I think everyone, whatever podcast, radio show ever, has talked about the right side of the defense and how they're all essentially the same player. And the one who's probably played the best this whole season is Luke Shen, and he makes the least amount of money. Like, you have to figure out, okay, who can we move on from that A, has value, so you're not paying someone to take that per player, and B, there is a replacement in-house that can do exactly what they were doing at a cheaper rate.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing with Brock Besser too. We talk about him coming back, and that he's coming up for a new contract this offseason. Is Connor Garland a better fit long-term than Brock Besser? And I know Andy has talked about how Garland hasn't really stepped up when it counts. But I think you have to look at this long-term. It is keeping Garland at 4.95 for the next 4 years after this better than signing Brock Besser at close to his qualifying offer for a significant amount of time versus trading them. Like, who gets the best? there's a lot of puzzle pieces that you have to find this offseason. This offseason is going to be just intriguing to see what happens with this team, because I think what part of what Marek said is, I think there's no matter what happens, whether it's they miss the playoffs or they somehow get in, there's still going to be major surgery on this roster this offseason for cap reasons specifically.
Not only that, but also just so Alvin can essentially put his stamp on the team, make it his team.
Well, I think that's that's how he's going to put his stamp on his team. He's going to find a way to give them more cap flexibility going forwards.
And I think everybody agrees that that's the way to go. It's, I guess the question is how you get there, I think, is where the debate comes.
Yep. Who gets moved out is going to be the debate until it actually happens, and then debated ad nauseum for the next 5-10 years until I don't know, because we're still debating over moves from the past of previous regimes.
Canucks fandom's not opinionated at all.
Nope, there's no opinion everything is hunky dory. Everything is fine in Canucks land. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody gets along perfectly fine and shares the same viewpoints on everything.
Yes, it's a kumbaya in Canucks land.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you also got, like, not only you got Kyle Burrows. I mean, if you're going to keep Luke Schenn, what do you do with Kyle Burrows, who's Luke Schenn light? Like, there's just a lot of, like, they may be the most busiest team in the offseason. And you still have the question, and I was reading Ryan. I saw a tweet from Ryan Rishaug, and it never occurred to me the Oilers haven't made a decision yet on Jay Woodcroft. That would seem logical. You're bringing back Woodcroft, but there's been no decision yet on Jay Woodcroft. Like, you still got the coaching carousel to figure out,
and that's on a playoff team.
Yeah.
Well, I think, again, that all comes down with the Oilers. It all comes down to what they actually do in the playoffs.
Exactly. Right.
It's the same thing with the Leafs. And going back to the Demko talk is, look at the Leafs and how could you, Devin, like, what is how comfortable are you with this team with Jack Campbell and Peter Mrazek, or what was the insert random goalie name here, going into these playoffs right now? And the same thing with Vegas. Like, they've got a good team, but that goaltending's not been great. Oilers, who knows what goaltending they're getting. Even Carolina, who has been budget shopping goaltenders, Freddie Anderson's out. Like, you can't replace goaltending. So, like, it's seeing what happens this offseason is going to be. I'm kind of excited for it, but I'm also kind of dreading it because it's just going to be just stressful.
Just on the Leafs, they got a huge break. I mean, everybody laughed at the Leafs when Hari Saturi was claimed on waivers by the Arizona Coyotes. I think the Leafs should thank the Coyotes. There should be a thank you gift basket to the Arizona Coyotes for that acquisition. Because I'm sorry. Like,
he's playing behind the Coyotes.
I'm an empath.
Like,
but
no one's gonna look good behind that team, Kevin. No one's looking good behind that team.
Come on. Literally, Dylan Dubé literally barely touched the puck and it went past him. Like, he's not. I'm sorry, he's not a National Hockey League goaltender.
It's so hard to decipher anything that happens in Arizona, because I agree, like, he's looked horrible, but at the same time, it's Arizona. Like,
are they the worst team in the NHL history? Like, is this a legitimate argument?
Honestly, they have to be close. Like, I've been kind of dialed out of Coyotes hockey for a few years, but when they played the Canucks the other day, I was looking at their roster. I'm like, okay, I know Kessel, Gostisbehere, and who, like, you know, half these guys, it sounds like when you're, you know, 20 years deep in your NHL video game or something, and you get like, you know, Pavel Sakic is the first overall pick or something, like just some random players who, you know, like honestly, like I bet you there's players in the WHL this year that could play on the Coyotes and fit in like a regular. Legitimately, like they are a borderline ECHL team. I think if you lose to the Coyotes, it's an embarrassment for your franchise.
Yeah, it was like I mean, it's like great for both teams. Like great the Canucks won, but and great the Flames won this weekend. Sure, all that, but I'm like this is it's a horrible hockey team. Like it's really hard to watch. Like defensively, there's nothing. They're terrible. They're terrible defensively. And they don't line. There's no line change. There's no structure to their game. It's really hard to watch. Like it's to me, they've got to be the worst I've ever seen. But
I'm like trying to pull up, thinking the Sabres when they tried to tank for McDavid, and they ended up with 56 points in 82 games, and Arizona's at 49 right now. It'll be tough for them to get there.
Let's not forget Colorado finished a season, I don't know how many years ago it was now. It feels like 4 or 5, but it wasn't like 47 points or something. I don't even think they got above 50.
Yeah, I think it was the year they got McKinnon, actually.
Yeah.
You know, that's the funny one, because you look at Colorado and yeah, they had a horrible season, but when you look at their roster, like they had some good players, right? They had like Matt Duchene, Ryan O'Reilly, like, you know, at least you could see their team and be like, okay, I recognize a few of these players. Arizona, like I said, you know, I honestly think half these players came out of the Siberian League last year.
Yeah.
That was 2012-13 was the year that we'd be talking about with yeah, they had 39 points.
Would they win 15 games?
16.
2012-13?
God.
Yeah.
Was that the year that walked away from them just before the season started?
Maybe. But that being said, the Flames were much better at 42.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was...
Oh. Yeah, that was like either Iggy's last season with them or like the first season without Iggy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Rebuilding, yeah.
They traded again at the deadline that year.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Midway through this, although that was 30. Hold on here. I mean, what about 39 points in 48 games though? That was the partial lockout season.
So are we saying that the Coyotes are still better than? Or sorry, like was Atlanta worse at some point? I want to say they were even worse. But I don't have the stats in front of me.
We're on a big tangent now. How bad can bad get?
Let's just all agree they're bad.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say too, it's nice for once with the Canucks when they played Arizona there the other day to actually pummel them, because it seems like so often these games that are such critical ones that they got to win, and if they lose them, then people are like, just it's over. They can't blow it against this team or that weak team. For them to come in and absolutely just pummel Arizona was nice to see, but also really telling us that just how bad they are.
The Thrashers in their inaugural season had 39 points in 82 games.
Yeah.
Back when expansion teams were actual expansion teams.
But I want to say they were like the worst example in the modern era. Like obviously there's some that are like, if you go back like 50, 75 years, you're going to have some pretty terrible teams. But as far as the modern era, I wanted to say, yeah, Atlanta was probably one of, if not the worst.
Yeah, but I mean, they came in pre-cap, right? So I almost find what Arizona is doing is worse because you could argue that there's more parity and, talent dispersed throughout the league, that somehow they just don't have any of it.
Well, again, that's because they constantly try and cheat the system by acquiring retired players, injured players so they get insurance money for those contracts and don't actually spend to the floor, but don't actually build anything, right? It's just, and now we're going they're the laughing stock of the league, and it's just the fact that Gary continues to try and find a way to keep them there when it's apparent that no matter who they get to own the team, it's just not working.
Like, is Arizona really that desirable of a market?
Yes. And one
it's not. I disagree. It's not. It really isn't, because it has not worked this whole time. And yes, it's got a big TV market, but that doesn't mean anything if you're not if
you don't get butts and seats.
You don't get butts and seats. Yeah.
Well, let me reword that. It is because of the size of the market. Yes, it is a desirable market, but it's
Houston's bigger.
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, I honestly don't think that this 5,000 seat arena, it's not going to happen. I think they are going to end up. There's going to be the last minute. It's going to be the Thrashers to Jets move. It's going to happen. I think there's more than a 50% chance that we're going to see the Coyotes in Arizona or in Houston next year.
Yeah,
I really think that. I can't see Gary, like, as much as Gary Bettman has been stubborn. He was stubborn with Atlanta too, because there was empty seats. It was a pretty dire, difficult situation in Atlanta for a while too, and it wasn't working. And Gary was being stubborn, and he gave in. He'll give in here. Like, he is not going to have a 5,000 seat arena on his. Like, there is no way that the owners and the players, and if you're drafting a Shane Wright or a Connor Bedard in the first round, or some of these big names that are coming up, and you're putting them in a 5,000 seat arena like that, I don't see it happen. I don't see this happening.
The biggest question mark for me would be, like, at least with Winnipeg, there was an ownership group waiting and ready. Is there going to be one for Houston?
I think that might be what they're looking to find quietly.
Yeah.
Oh, who's the Mavericks owner from
Mark Cuban?
Yeah.
Oh, guy from
we'll call it Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. And in the case of the Jets too, like the Mark Chipman ownership group there, I think was very well regarded amongst the other owners before they got in. And so it would have been hard for Gary to be stubborn about not giving them a shot. Whereas in this case, it's a bit of a different deal. But yeah, we've talked about this on a previous show. I'm with Kevin. It just seems too preposterous for that whole 5,000 seat arena plan to actually be followed through on.
And
one thing if it was like half a season or one season, but no, they want to do that for 3 seasons while they're building a full-sized one in Tempe.
But they haven't even decided on this arena yet. They haven't even decided if they're going to actually use this arena. Like, city council hasn't even made a decision yet.
Let alone they haven't even approved any sort of like anything in terms of the new arena in Tempe as well. That's the major issue.
Yeah,
like, it's just
I don't see it happening. It would be akin to and Andy will know this because we had a private chat about this. It's akin to the Major League Baseball, the Tampa Bay Rays. Like, it's an embarrassment. Like, it really, yeah. To switch gear, is there anything on the Canucks that we need to touch on, or just?
I guess I'll ask you guys. How many more starts do you think Halak gets?
Yeah, I was just talking about this with a friend here today. I guess the theory would be Halak will play tomorrow night's game, but for me, like, I think we're at the stage now that Demko, as long as he feels up for it, should be playing every game here.
Although after he got the win in Colorado, maybe he gets another chance. I don't know. But yeah, I don't see it being too many.
Yeah,
I think he gets one. I think it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, all depends on where they are in the playoff race, and if they can stay into to the end. And yeah, they've got a back-to-back LA versus LA and Edmonton to end the season. But at that point, if you're still in it, you're not playing anyone but Demko.
Yeah.
So I look at it as it's tomorrow versus Ottawa will be probably his last start, unless they fall out.
Well, that's the thing, right? Is that, like you guys said, you're not going to play Halak in, say, game 81 of the season when it's must win. I don't think he gets another start. I think they play Demko back-to-back here. Like, I had kind of penciled Halak in versus Arizona because it's Arizona and it's guaranteed win night. He didn't play. Like, if I was the coach, I wouldn't play Halak again. If you're going to go down swinging, I'd rather go down with my best player than miss the playoffs by 1 point because I played a backup versus Ottawa.
Yeah, and the argument too. Well, yeah, Kevin, I saw your hand. We'll get the argument of Demko at say 80% because of playing the night before versus what Halak could offer you as a fresh goalie. Well, yes, Halak has been better in some of his more recent games, but overall this season he's not stopping the puck very much. I just don't think you can take that chance now. There's no travel between games. Ottawa's coming in on a back-to-back as well. I think you roll with Demko for both games here. Kev.
I would go, if it was me, I'd go back-to-back, and if I was going to play Halak in any game this week, it would probably be in Minnesota. That would be the one that I would put him in.
Are you saying that now, based on what you said earlier, is that to you the least winnable game, and you go all in for the other games?
Well, yeah, that Ottawa game, you need the points too. Like, even win or lose, you need the points tomorrow. That's 2 points you got to have. Like, that's a scheduled win. Minnesota, I would argue, isn't a scheduled win, so that would be, if you're going to take the night off, that might be a good Halak night to have. And maybe he steals you one. He stole you one in Colorado. He might be able to steal you one in Minnesota, and then you bring Demko into Calgary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't hate that strategy. So, yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's what I would do. But I'm kind of with, I don't think we see Halak until the season's until that gray is. What did you say, Tyler? The gray
the name bar is grayed out on the graphic. Yeah,
yeah. You play. Yeah, you should probably play Demko as much as you can, and he would want to play. I think that's the other thing as well. And I think he has to have a say. I think he would have some say in that as well. I would think.
Yeah.
Anything else on the Canucks or? No. All right. Hearing nothing, we will just wanted to. I forgot to do this at the top, but Mike Bossy passed away at the age of 65, and I think we should pay some tribute to him. Depending on your perspective, definitely top 2-3 goal scorers. Open to say best goal scorer ever play this game. He was. Yes, he won the Lady Byng, but he was also a guy that was decided specifically, I will not fight. That will not be the way I play. He played a specific way, and it worked for him. And it's no doubt he is a legend in this game. And I'm glad that people are taking the time. My whole fear is, maybe being a bit older, is like some of those older players, they don't remember that old Guy Lafleur when he flew down the right there without the helmet and he smoked the cigarettes and stuff. They don't remember that Guy Lafleur. But I'm seriously glad that people are taking the time to know Mike Bossy and know how that Islanders team and how tough that Islanders team was to play, because they were that was a damn tough team to play. I mean, ask the 1984 Canucks how tough that New York Islanders team was to play. So I'm glad that people are recognizing Mike Bossy for he is a huge loss.
I think you meant 82, not 84, but yes, absolutely.
Yes, right. Sorry. I don't know why I always say 84 when it is 82, but
yeah, he's got the best goals per game plays stat compared to like all the greats at 0.762. And for reference, Ovechkin's at 0.612, Gretzky's at 0.601. Matthews is at 0.636 so far in his career. So yeah, he was a superstar back then, and him not being able to get to 1,000 games and still put up over almost 600 goals is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I was gonna tease Kevin a little bit and be like, but was he a superstar though? But yeah, of course he was.
Yeah,
Kevin said he wasn't. Yeah. He has on this podcast, and I've gone after him for it.
Yeah, I mean, I just 9 consecutive seasons with 50 goals or more. One season with 69 goals. That was his sophomore season, and I believe the 9 consecutive is a record for that many goals. And part of the Islanders dynasty. Yes, taken too soon. Another one taken too soon. So it's a sad day for hockey with Mike Bossy passing for sure.
Let me reword what I should have probably said. Mike Bossy was a superstar on a team that didn't have a lot of superstars. Like the Oilers and the Canadiens were the teams that they had the superstars. They had the Gretzkys, the Messiers, the Coffeys, the Currys, and the Canadiens had the Savards, the Robinsons, the Lafleurs, all of that. But the Islanders, like Trottier and Potvin and Billy Smith, I wouldn't have considered them like superstars. I would consider them stars, but we have a whole debate about what a superstar is in this league, and I have a very different perspective on what that is, which is controversial in and of itself. But Mike Bossy, it was a superstar on a team that didn't have a lot of superstars. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
I don't want to get into it because you already mentioned a name that I'm like, no, he was. And that's Denny Potvin was a superstar too. So
yeah. I mean, like even going back to his junior days, he scored 50 goals every year except for the year in junior, and he was 15 and played 4 games. And then his last year in the NHL, when his back was already gone, right? Like, I don't think we'll ever see a guy who consistently scored that many goals ever again. Even in the playoffs, he was like a 0.8 goals per game in the playoffs. So, excuse me, all he did was score goals. And it's very sad that he's no longer here. And it's unfortunate because you guys are right when you talk about greatest players of the game. He never gets mentioned. Excuse me, but he probably should because he might not have the statistical numbers to show he's the best goal scorer of all time, but I don't see anybody else on the NHL record books that scored 50 every year.
Yeah. No, just a pure goal scorer like anyone else you want to discuss around pure goal scoring, you got to have that measured against Mike Bossy.
But he never was able to play with Wayne Gretzky. That was very, very fascinating. Like, they never were able to click. They put them on a line together in Team Canada. They never found that chemistry. That was the one interesting thing. But anyway.
There's only so much puck to go around.
Yeah.
It's true. Yeah. Let's we'll save a couple of these. I tossed a few other. Does anyone want to talk about the Eastern Conference? I threw that on the agenda. I don't think there's much to say that's wrapped up. I think it's boring and no, it is. It's boring.
Well,
I was going to say Snorfest. So
yeah, the fact that there's no playoff chase really is that takes a lot of the interest away there. But no, just going to be excited to see what the actual matchups end up being and how Toronto does in particular.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The only story that matters is who will Toronto play,
and how many games will it be before they're out. No, I'm just kidding. I actually do think they're going to break through this year. I'm feeling it.
Well,
you can clip this, and then we'll review that one in a few weeks.
That's right. Yeah, I was going to say we should say who they if you were the Leafs who they want to play, and then we'll review in a week after the playoffs when they're eliminated who they maybe should have played. Because to me, I think they want to play Boston. I think if they beat Boston, it's kind of like the Canucks beating the Blackhawks. They'll get all this weight lifted off their shoulders. They can go deep. The team I don't want, like if I was a Toronto fan, I want no part of Florida. Florida looks like an absolute buzzsaw, and I would stay as far away as possible from Florida.
Can you imagine? Do you realize that there's a possibility that Tampa and Florida could also be a first round matchup, and Tampa is the wild card team?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That is
last year sure gave everybody, although it was brief, though, it's tantalizing, wasn't it?
All right. Quick question.
Yeah.
If there's 4 teams from each division in the playoffs, regardless of standings and points, should they just stay within the division? It's not that way right now, but I think they should.
Oh, because you're right. Tampa would. I keep forgetting because Tampa would play the first place team in the Metro.
Carolina.
Let's not give that to Carolina just yet. But yeah, Carolina or Rangers. Yeah.
I mean, to answer your question, I think if you're going to do this division and wild card thing, I think you should have to win out your division. I'd go 1-4, 2 versus 3 in each division. I mean, it sucks this year because if that was the format, a team, probably Dallas, would miss the playoffs out of the Central, and a team like Vancouver or Vegas would sneak into the playoffs when they probably don't deserve to. However, it's the way it is, right? Like if you want to be crowned the best team in the league, I think you should be able to beat any team at any point in the season. So I actually really like that idea of having the 4 teams in each division and kind of playing out until you get like a quote unquote division winner in the conference final.
Actually, my idea was more of a hybrid. You still have the wild card. So if you still have the 5th team from another division, then they go into that other division. But if it works out like it's going to work out in the East, where you've got 4 from each division, it doesn't matter where those bottom 2 teams finish comparative to each other. They just stay within their division. Because I think if we knew that, then we knew that we could potentially have Toronto, Boston, and Florida, Tampa in the first round. Like, oh, that's first round just amazing. Like that's not safe for work. First round matchups.
Yeah,
and then you could potentially have Carolina or the Rangers versus Washington, and then the other versus Pittsburgh. Like to me that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that idea.
If you go to the CFL, like it's sort of that with the crossover, you have to have a better record than the team in that other division, and this would be kind of the same sort of idea to that rule, because I want to would anyone want to see if Tampa goes into the wild card spot, them to face Carolina over them facing Florida? No.
It always just depends on the current circumstances. I still feel like after all these years of this current format that the old 1 through 8 setup was a better setup.
I like this, but the whole point of this was to create rivalries and have that, so that you have teams facing off in the playoffs multiple, building up the animosity. And maybe I'm being a little bit nostalgic from being able to slay the dragon with the Canucks did in 2011, and going, that's honestly, if I'm a Leafs fan, I'd want that chance to slay the dragon and beat Boston, because that would be a galvanizing thing. And at that point, as much as I hate Toronto, I'd be throwing some money down on the Leafs to at least make the Cup final.
It'd definitely be interesting. That's for damn sure.
Yeah,
and even then, you keep it within the division. Like, say in the West, you've got say Vegas or Vancouver make it in, but they somehow make it to that first that make it in, they're going to play Colorado. But if it was part of that in there and they're in the wild card spot, it'd be Calgary and Vegas versus Calgary, Vegas versus Vancouver, or Calgary versus Vancouver is a much better divisional matchup than Colorado versus either of those teams, although Colorado versus Vegas is fun too. And then you would have, Colorado versus Dallas or Nashville.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
If the point is to create rivalries, you need to have, I think that's the next step that needs to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, like, you're going to see the best series probably in that first round. I think Minnesota St. Louis is going to be barn burner. Like, that's not going to be safe for work. But at all.
Be blood, guts, and gore.
Yeah, that it will be pretty much, right? So yeah, I mean, yeah. Even if Vegas, if Vegas could sneak into third, or Vancouver could sneak in and it's a Vancouver Edmonton first round like that, I think that would be underrated, like not safe for work either. And
there would be a rivalry that would heat up real quick if it ended up being Vancouver Edmonton for sure.
Yes. Oh God, yes.
Yeah. The other one, maybe we'll end with this. Jeff Merrick had this on today, and I thought it was an interesting question we could kind of kick around. What is the worst take in hockey right now? Like, what is the opinion in hockey that is prevailing that you are like, this is a really dumb take? And Jim Matthews
is a superstar.
Fighting has no place in the game.
I'm sorry, Kev. I had to.
It is a lot.
No, well,
I'm not serious with that, though, Kev. I'm not serious with that.
I thought you were going to say Johnny Gaudreau was a better passer than Leon Draisaitl. I thought you were going to shoot me with that one. But he is a better passer than Leon Draisaitl, so whatever.
I don't know if this is necessarily a take, but what I find very frustrating is that Connor McDavid has set the bar so high that he's not always the front runner for the MVP. I mean, he's going to score like 140 points this year, and I think the MVP is basically decided to be Matthews, which, don't get me wrong, Matthews scoring 60 goals is incredible, but Connor McDavid is lighting up the league like nobody has since Gretzky, and doesn't even seem like he's in the discussion to be league MVP.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's kind of been that way even before McDavid came around too. That if it's not some new, fresh story, they're just never really getting much discussion around that.
Yeah,
I'd love. Okay, I'll do it. That we need to take away the valuable from the heart is the worst take.
Oof,
I like that. It adds conversation. We're talking about a news cycle that changes so much. And the content creation has honestly replaced good journalism a lot of the time here. The debate for the heart is some of the best stuff out there because you have value in there. And I love that. And I think Matthews is the right choice because I think he's talk about the player who's taking a step defensively in his game. This league, you do not win by scoring points. You win by being better in a 200-foot and outscoring the other team. If you score 20 goals, if you score 50 goals, but you're on the ice for 60, you're going to lose, right? So you have to have that, and I think I hate seeing that because I think it is a ridiculous take and it's a cop out because it's just like, well, he scored the most points, therefore he's the best player. No, that's not a good take.
But tell us how you really feel.
It's what I do on this podcast.
Yes.
My thing is this: McDavid is the hands down the Ted Lindsay Award winner. Like, there's no question. Like he is the best player in the game. The debate about valuable, and it's hard to say that when I say that, it's the other side of my brain is like, well, doesn't that mean he's the most valuable? But I just think that there's other like
the other. Can I just say this, that the points per game is not that far off from between Matthews and McDavid this year. Matthews is at 1.46 and McDavid's at 1.47.
Yeah.
So
I do see where Andy's coming from. I feel like McDavid is getting disrespected a little bit, though. I'm not the biggest Leon Draisaitl fan, but I do feel McDavid's getting disrespected.
Man, learn how to play defense. Then you'll get the respect.
Well, you win in the playoffs.
As long as it's
Matthews hasn't either, but he's getting it now. Sorry, Tyler.
Yeah, as long as the Hart Trophy is a media award, then storylines and freshness and all that is going to dominate the whole process. It's always going to be that way. It's just not it doesn't serve the interests of the people voting to just keep handing it out to the same guy all the time.
And I know we've been talking about McDavid and Matthews, but honestly, I have to throw Shesterkin out there because Rangers wouldn't be where they are without him this season.
Again,
that's another good thing to talk about, right? Is that how come goalies never win the Hart Trophy? Because you're right, like take Shesterkin off the Rangers and they're probably not even in the playoffs. But again, he's not even really in the discussion anymore for the Hart Trophy. And I think the last goalie to win the Hart Trophy was Jose Theodore in 2002, I want to say. And the only reason he won is because one of the Eastern voters, I think from Montreal, refused to put Yzerman on his ballot. So Yzerman lost the MVP by 1 point or however they dole it out because this guy didn't give him an 8th place vote.
Yeah,
great. A salty francophone.
Carey Price in 2014-15 was the last goalie to win it.
Right. Yeah, but it is. Yeah, I knew. I was like, I remember that. By the way, Jeff Patterson just tweeted out no chase on for the Canucks. Oh. So there goes that Patterson chase on dream combination. But Esa Lindell, it looks like not in the lineup for the Stars either. So
I'll take that trade off.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I agree. My one is the one that kind of I think the one that bugs me the most is the coach of the year is always with the most improved team, and it's never given to the guy, the team that has the most points. Like we just assume, they are a good team. They obviously don't need any coaching. Mm-hmm. It's like I've never been like. I think that there should be more respect for teams that are doing well. Like
same thing as another award that's it's the Broadcasters Association that votes on the Jack Adams, but it's they're media people as well. So
they like their underdog stories.
Yeah, especially the play-by-play guys. They really always like the underdog to do well. So yeah. On that note, shall we get ready for the game?
Yes, we'll wrap it up. Andy, tell us quickly about your podcast for those who do not know.
Yeah. So thanks for inviting me on, guys. I appreciate it. You can find us iTunes, Spotify, etc. Cap Space Wins Cups usually come out every week. We try to get a guest every week. I think our last episode was with Matt Sakaris. Like I said, usually do 45 minutes an hour. Try to get a guest. Come check us out. Follow me on Twitter at CSWCAndy. And I appreciate the invite tonight.
Thanks. And how do we follow everyone else? It was great to have you, Andy. It was awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. You can follow me at BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
I'm at Schneids on most social media.
Devin Gordhow09. I wait till Wednesday where I'll tell you the story of what I said to Devin and almost got my face punched in. Kevin, I am KEVOLE, Shifts and Pucks, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. We're back on Wednesday to talk about the Flames. Did they clinch first place yet? We'll have to see who's the better matchup. We'll get into all of that. And probably some Leafs talk too, because we always do that with Devin. Thanks, everyone. We will talk to you all very soon. Enjoy the game. Bye for now.